Live on WFLA Now. Feel good and live your best life with Bloom Health Club. Here's Gail Guayardo.
All right, everyone. The Summer Olympics are right around the corner, and we are so excited here in the Bloom Health Club to have three-time Olympic champion, Tampa Bay's only Brooke Bennett. Brooke, welcome to the Bloom Health Club.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Such
a fun time, right? Such a fun, giddy time of year.
Yes, it is. And you're super giddy because the Olympics are here. And I mean, you're the girl that gets up when the race is live.
I do. And I think, I wasn't quite so giddy yet until now everybody's like, you've got to be so giddy. And I'm trying to control myself. And I'm like, it's not time. It's still only March. We have until July. And you've got me now. So
right.
Yes. And I am the one that looks at the TV schedule, and I will get up whenever the swimming events are live during the Olympics because I want to watch it as it's happening, and I don't want any social media to spoil it for me. And then I have to make my own predicaments, my own critiques on the races that I don't want to hear the broadcasters, even though I love Rowdy Gaines, dear friend of mine. But sometimes I'm like, no, Rowdy, you got to call it differently.
I love it. I love it. So you actually just went to Atlanta where you won your first Olympic gold medal in 1996. Unbelievable to me. I think I had the opportunity to talk to you on the radio. I was so nervous. I'm like, I'm talking to an Olympic gold champion in the late 90s. What was that like? What was it like taking your children to the place that you grabbed the gold for the US of A?
Yeah, so I'll hold it up and I'll show you a couple pictures.
Okay.
So is this where you? Is that good there?
Can you see? Yes.
So
there it is.
we went at the back end of my boys' spring break.
Hold it up a little.
And
yeah, there it is.
And there we are in Centennial Park with my boys. And so I took them there and we went over to there's a monument there coming out, and there's 4 of them, and the boys are pointing to my name.
See, there it is, engraved right
Engraved,
there.
yep.
What was that like?
So
Had you been back?
I had been back before. Yes, I had been back a couple of different times, and I had gone to see it, and kind of reliving that moment on and it was so different when you're there for the Olympics and you're there to compete. You view those cities differently. It's different than just going back. But I have to say, this time going into Centennial Park, and we took the train in because we were staying up in the mountains. And when we turned down the street and we were walking downhill, my boys immediately saw the Olympic rings. And their response, Mom, that's like the tattoo mommy that you have.
I love it.
And I'm like, yes. And they know that Mommy went to the Olympics and they've seen the races. They've seen those things and other people talking about it. But, it's kind of like what we talked about when I went to the race over in Daytona, or when they see me do open water swims. They're more into what Mommy's doing now. Yeah. They're more into seeing that Mommy is still active and still competing and still swimming. So to take them back to that time when, Mommy was 16 years old, it was just kind of a moment frozen in time for me, for them to see it, and for them to read Mommy's name and it said gold next to them. I think for them it kind of registered more than it ever has before.
That is absolutely beautiful.
9 and 6.
Okay, so
So they're just starting to, but they're at the same time when other people talk about it or they're around and they're talking about Mommy's accomplishments, it's kind of like, oh geez, Mom, they still have that mom, Mom, seriously. I'm getting to that age where it's like,
enough is enough already.
Mom, it's not cool.
Yeah. And as the years go by, they will realize how cool it is. But I want to talk about this, and I know this is something that you also worked on an article with Bloom Tampa Bay digital reporter and producer Brody Waddell on. They still see their mom just immersed in the Tampa Bay community, doing so much. I mean, look, you look like Baywatch there. You look like a hot model running across the beach. You dedicate so much of your life to helping youth and to giving back. So talk to me about that.
I think, I'm looking at all these pictures and, being in the Tampa Bay community my whole life, it's like everybody's seen me grow up. I went through the weird teenage awkward stage with braces, like in front of everybody. And, then I come and I'm an adult now and, working and career. I mean, that's what everybody knew me as.
Cute.
Like, oh my God. Right. That was my first summer of swimming. That's at Bobby Hicks Pool over off of Gandy. But, to me, this is what made my accomplishments so great, to now be able to give back. To me, the Olympic gold, the Olympic accomplishments, yes, I've shared that and I feel like the community has embraced me. But now being in that community and giving back and working for the nonprofit Clearwater for Youth and funding youth sports and getting kids to be active and teaching water safety and all those types of things, it's the full circle for me that I can share that message now with how many thousands and thousands of children and family that, hey, if I want Olympic gold on the way, to me, this is more of an impact.
And, winning Olympic gold, and it was interesting because we had you on Bloom, our globally syndicated health and wellness show headquartered in Tampa, Florida. And you were with one of the top folks with actually, I didn't realize you guys went so far back. Clara, back all the way to that swimming pool that we saw you at for the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay. And, talk to me. I know you've got a big swim coming up, but you help youth with mental health. You help set children up for success. And even though they might not be an Olympic gold medalist winner in life, just participating and learning what you teach them sets them up for a greater life.
It does. And that's what Clearwater for Youth does. I mean, we help facilitate funds to youth sports programs in Pinellas County. And those are for the families that cannot afford the registration fee. And so those kids would be left not being involved in youth sports. And so CFY is able to facilitate the funds to those programs so that if a family can only afford $25 for that season of youth football, that program now has the funds due to CFY to lower those registration fees or completely cover it for a family that is in that much need. And we feel that no child should go without, and no child should be left out playing organized youth sports for what it does for child development. And I fully believe that. I mean, I started swimming not because I wanted to be an Olympic swimmer. That dream came along the ways. I was a hyperactive child, and the doctors and the pediatricians were talking to my mom about medications. And that was just when medications in the early 80s were starting to come out with the ADD, the ADHD. And I loved swimming. I had to learn to swim. My grandparents had a pool in their backyard. So all the grandkids got in the water with my grandparents, and we knew how to swim from the time we were walking. I just loved it. And my grandfather saw that. So then when my energy level went through the roof and my parents were like, what are we going to do with her? Then that's why I joined the swim team so young. And that's when I met Clara. And so I was 6 years old when I first joined a swim team. And it was so that I would go to school. My mom would take me to swim practice Monday through Friday for about an hour to an hour and a half. And my mom would say she was then normal. If I didn't take her to swim, my mom would say I was on the back of the couch reading a book upside down because I didn't know what to do with my energy. So it became just an outlet, which is what youth sports is for kids today. It's an outlet. Or it's not going home to an empty home because mom and dad are working crazy schedules, that they can go and be involved with coaches and mentors. That there's so much data out there that shows how a child develops because they play youth sports, and that it's okay for them to fail. They don't have to win every competition, every tournament. That failure teaches us how to be productive in society, right? Then we get into as adults, and how many days do we go into work and nothing goes as planned? Nothing. And I go back to my years of training. Like on days that I struggle at work, or if something doesn't go my way, or I submit a grant and think I did so good for CFY, and then we get the email saying we didn't receive it. Well, I have to go back to the drawing board and go, how do I become better? How do I learn from this? How do I grow for this to do better for myself and to do better for the organization? And so youth sports shows that, and it makes them better in school. It makes them more productive, and it allows them to learn to set goals and be goal oriented at a very young age.
I think that's incredible. I want to circle back and talk about learning from failure, because you were talking to me about this behind the scenes when we were gearing up for our segment on Bloom, the syndicated TV show. And you said, kids today, they want to grow up so fast. And I think that they look at the adults around them and they think to themselves, well, I want that right now. And nothing in life comes without failure, without falling, without rejection, without the door being slammed in your face. I mean, that is part of life. And somewhere along the way, we've demonized those moments instead of celebrating those moments, because those are the teachable moments of life.
They are. And I think, and I like going and looking, and I remember Michael Phelps talking about this, of course, I'm going to reference to a swimmer, but Simone Biles did as well. And so many, and if you really allow and good news and media coverage in sports, I think shows this. And these are the stories I like to hear is, okay, so I won 3 Olympic gold medals. How many races did I swim? How many meets did I go to where it was just devastating? I mean, we would travel out of state. We would go to a meet, and whether I false started, swam horrible, whatever the cases may be, there are more stories of that than the glory of standing on the Olympic podium 3 times. And I mean, the GOATs of every sport will tell you of stories of events or meets that really taught them the lesson. And my lesson was, believe it or not, at the 1996 Olympic trials, when I was favored to qualify for the Olympics in the 400 and the 800, and the 400 event did not go my way. It wasn't that I wasn't prepared. It's not that my coach and I didn't have a good strategy. It's not that I didn't swim it the way we thought I should swim it. I just ended up 4th. But I had to somewhere from finishing that and getting ready for the 800, figure out, how do I take that failure to make it the best lesson in my career? And honestly, if I wasn't successful at that, then the outcome of the 800 wouldn't have happened. But I go back to that day, and as much of it was on me, I go back to the way my parents were through my entire swimming career, and they facilitated my dreams. They did not push me on my dreams. They were there to do everything in their ability to sacrifice in their life to make sure that I could get to swim practice, to make sure that I could get to those meets. And my mom was at Olympic trials in 96, and the 400 was swam. Myself and the team went and got dinner. And when we got up to the hotel room, my mom took my swim bag, never once asked me how I felt about my swim, never once asked what my coach and I talked about. And maybe you're sitting here like, what, did she not care? No, she did. She cared about being my mom. She cared about me being her daughter, not about the Olympic.
Being some like backseat.
Yep. So she took my bag, said, go take a nice hot shower. And when you're done, I'll French braid your hair and I'll paint your toes. Aww. And that was, my mom always braided my hair from the time I was a little girl, like to put my hair under a swim cap, because she didn't let me cut my hair until I was like 9 years old, right? So I had the long, blonde, curly hair. But that was always something that my mom did. And here I am at 16, growing up so fast in the eyes of the world. And my mom just simply was like, no, you're my daughter. And I don't care if you never make the Olympics, you don't ever win a gold medal, I'm going to love you the same. And I love you no different from doing that or not. But it was the message of like my parents. And I always felt that, like, my parents did not push me. My parents, it was not the difference of becoming an Olympian or excelling. I mean, my dad, even to this day, when I tell him I'm doing the swim on Saturday, is like, how many more of these swims are you going to do? And I'm like, until I can't go anymore, Dad. It's just a part of who I am.
That's so cool. How is it with your sons? You know, do you share the same parenting style as your parents?
I think we all do it at some point, or we all say, and I, there's a lot of things that I do where I do say, oh, I am my mom, I am my dad, or I remember I am my grandmother, or something like that. And I feel I'm a little bit more old school, which I like. And, and then in some ways I'm not.
When you say old school,
oh, there's discipline. They've been backhand a couple of times. And you know, and it doesn't. And I have a pickleball paddle in my car because I like to play pickleball, and the pickleball paddle has been found on their leg
bottoms?
in the back seat.
Yeah.
So we have a wooden spoon at home, and they know those types of things. But there was a wooden spoon at my grandmother's house. We used to get the fly swatter.
yeah.
My grandmother she'd reach up on top of the fridge, and she was so short, so we would jump up and push it to the back of the refrigerator, the fly swatter, so she couldn't get it. But you know, I want my kids to know boundaries. I want my kids to know respect, and they get a little lackadaisical at times. And the other day, my son was like, "Can you refill my water?" And like came and sat his water on the counter. And I said, "Excuse me?"
You're like, no.
You're 9. You know where the water is, but I'll do it if, you know, what do you say? Right. Mommy, please. Or I do something. I go, what do you say? Thank you. Like, so I do have those reminders that I do really want them to value people around them, respect people around them, be polite, but also be kids. Like I think for more my parenting skill is I'm not trying to shelter them, but I'm trying to protect them from the world around them, because to me, I'm scared sometimes of like the decisions I have to make in my adult life on what's going on in our society and world. And I want my kids to be kids longer. And I think I'll get pushback on that from them at some point. But right now I'm trying to just expose them to be kids and enjoy that. And like they want to grow up so fast.
They do.
They want to grow up so fast. But at the same time, like when we were in the mountains in the creek, like I was in the creek playing with them. I'm showing them that, you know, you will always have the ability to be a kid and act like a kid and do silly things.
I think that's so beautiful. And I think it's beautiful too, because it's an example for your kids. That you're with them. And I want to segue this into your passion for helping our youth and people in general with their mental health. I know you're teaming up with the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay. I mean, people are like, what's going on with today's youth and what's happening? And I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, there's not enough time playing in the creek with mom. Right. You know, there's not enough time like with the youth that you're helping direct into sports. It's like giving kids opportunities outside of what is their boxed in world is a game changer.
It is. And I mean, there are times where I have to pick them up from school and my phone rings and it's my boss. And I tell them, I have to answer this, you know, and there are times where, you know, my son was home from sick the other day. We had that whole flu thing go through our house, and I'm on work and I tell him, go into the living room and hang out. I'll be there in a minute, you know? And so there are times when my kids are around where mommy has to work. But when the time that mommy is done, I try to be very apparent that the phone goes away, the computer is off, and that we family bike rides more. Mommy runs with the dog and they ride bikes. So I'm like, okay, let's get out and go. Or, you know, we go down to the beach and we swim and we play and we try to do those things. And I'm very vigilant when we like our certain places that we like to go out to eat and certain treats. And when we go to a restaurant, mommy's phone is down. Like I do not sit and let my boys color and stuff. We play tic-tac-toe, we color, we do interactive things, especially the restaurants that have like the fun kids menus. Like I remember doing those things with my parents. So it's a time that we have conversation. And it's a treat for them as well because they like to go out and they get to pick their place where we're going to go eat. But I mean, I've been out and I've watched, and I'm not shaming. I mean, we all live our different lives, and but I see and I'll watch other families around me and their older kids are both on their phones playing and there's little to no conversation. My kids don't have cell phones yet. I'm trying to hold off on that. But I think that's the boundaries where I say I'm a little old school. Like it's down, it's away. Like you don't need it. Your friends can wait. This is our time.
Yeah. And not to mention that you never get that time back.
No.
I mean, now with my youngest being 16, I look at it, it's also fleeting. I know, Brody, that you guys worked on an article together, you and Brooke. Tell me about that.
Well, we're still in the process of that, but
Okay.
yes, just kind of going over everything, like kind of what we're talking about here, and like the experience of being an Olympian and stuff like that. So I'm kind of excited to get that
To
going
dive
once we
into it,
have
pun
it.
intended?
Yes, to
Yes.
dive into it. Yeah, we're gonna make as many puns as possible.
Yes.
So
Well, and I think that's, in talking about my kids and the mental health and everything that we're exposed to. And in my swimming career, mental health was dealt with very differently. And it was shown as a weakness. And we've seen more and more people bring it up and more athletes bring it up, which is great. I mean, we're the role models and we're the leaders. And I think that goes for the same in our world. I mean, I worked in the TV world. I understand the stress and the deadlines of that stuff. And you and I have talked about that before. And, the same thing with, keeping the schedule of a mom and running and being the development manager of CFY and still wanting to do these swims, and brings me into Clara and the Crisis Center and Strokes for Hope. That I think what I want to come out of this and my involvement is, I love that it's a charity event and I can swim. And that Clara said, she wasn't a runner, so she wanted to be able to do something that she loved to do. And swimming has always been an outlet for me to deal with some of my stresses and the hard times through my life. But that talking about it or bringing it up is not a sign of weakness. I've had conversations, and I still think that there's still this stigma that coming out and saying that you need to talk or mental health is still viewed as you're not strong enough. And that's and I actually say reverse it. That if you are coming out and you are talking about it and you are saying you need help, it makes you a stronger person. It does not make you a weak person. It actually makes you stronger. It makes you smarter. It makes you aware, and that you will grow as an individual once you're able to talk about it. And I think I went through a divorce. I balanced that out with co-parenting, with the dad, which, we've had our downfalls and we've had our hard times, and we still do, and we always will. But he and I co-parent very well, and we talk to our kids. And that was the promise that we made ourselves. Like, we will come to an agreement amongst each other because it is what's best for our boys.
And so many people do not do that.
Right.
Like, they don't do what's best for the kids. They almost use the kids as a rope in a game of tug of war.
Right. And we can't do that because we're guiding them and we're gearing them. But then at the same time, during that time in my life, I actually was able to open up about me losing my grandfather in '96, just
I was
before
reading about
the
that.
Olympic Games.
Man, I was reading that, as I was, I was writing the show that you were in here in Tampa. And actually, if you're around, we're coming to you on a Monday. This show is going to air on a Wednesday this coming week at 2 p.m. on WFLA. And of course, we're going to post it on bloomtampabay.com, so you can always watch it there. But as I was putting the trivia questions together about you winning your first gold medal in the 800 meter, correct?
The 800.
In 1996 in Atlanta, Georgia, I also read that it was with a very, very heavy heart, because it was hard for you to celebrate, because it was that cloud of the loss of your grandfather, who was an important person in your life.
Very, very. And we lost him suddenly, and it was a Sunday morning, and I went to practice Monday morning.
nice.
And, my coach had talked to my mom and said, she's fine. If the family needs a couple of days, don't worry. She's on track. She'll be fine. We were still a few months out from the Olympic Games. And the conversation was, that was where I was supposed to be. And at that time, I did not want to talk about losing my grandfather. And I'm not saying that it was right or wrong at that time. Maybe
Grief is how you handle it.
right. Yeah. And so I knew that if I was at home grieving him, I would disappoint him. And a lot of times it's not the easiest form, but it was the only thing that I knew, was that I just had to go swim. So going through my life, and there were certainly some very dark periods where I knew I hadn't fully addressed losing him. And so as my swimming career ended, it got dark again. And then as I was going through my divorce and with my kids, it was complicated again. And it was like that kept coming back, and not until I talked about it when I'm trying to get past and trying to figure out how do we steer our kids in the right direction through the divorce. I also opened up and talked more about my grandfather and figured out how to grow and finally, I think, fully grieve that. And now I feel like I'm finally 24 years later, I've healed from that loss. And that's a long time. That's a long time to do. But to be able to go back and to talk about it now is a growing. And so it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of growing that I even now to myself will, on days talk to my grandfather. And one, I say, I hope I'm making you proud. And two is, please steer me in the direction, guide me in the direction, help me get there, whatever it is. And so it's kind of like he is my mental strength. So it's how there's so many different avenues that we can use for our mental health. We just sometimes have to get a little bit of help to guide us there. And it's a sign of strength, not weakness. And so if doing this swim on Saturday and swimming around Davis Island and Harbor Island for 6.2 miles helps one person take that step, then the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, Clara and her team are doing a good job. And I'm just aiding the only way I know how, and that's to swim it.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about the swim. This podcast will live on podcast platforms. And so I just want to alert everybody that right now we are March 18th, 2024. So just a date stamp so you don't show up at Davis Islands to cheer on swimmers that are not there.
Right.
The open water swim is happening this coming weekend, and it is to raise money for the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay to give hope to people struggling with mental challenges. They're just anybody that needs a helping hand, that needs to be lifted in life. So tell us about the swim.
So the swim will take place, and there's the 5K course, which is around Harbor Island, or the 10K course will go fully around Harbor Island and Davis Island. So actually, to tell you the truth, I've never swum the course before. I've only been on my paddleboard around it. So this will be the first time for me taking part in the swim. So I'm very excited. And like I said, doing it with Clara and I's history going back to my first swim team and knowing Clara since I was 6 years old.
Yeah, talk to us about Clara. She's, like I said, a bigwig with the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, but she was also
she was my teammate at the Tampa Bay Rays at the Boys and Girls Club in Inner Bay. And she was actually, we're 10 years apart. So Clara would have been 16 when I was first.
And you were 6.
And I was 6. And Clara was actually
when she called you Brookie. I knew you guys.
Did you hear that? Did you hear it, Brookie?
She called you Brookie and went way back.
And there's only a few people that still call. Funny enough, my boss does, because I've
really?
known my boss way longer than we've been working together. But yeah, way in my past, that was a very popular nickname for me, was Brookie. Or I'm surprised she didn't say Brookie Baby, because that's what everybody called me at Tampa Bay Rays. But she was in high school at the time, and so her kind of first job was coaching, and she assisted the other coaches with helping the younger kids that came in to practice. So, when you're at swim team, like your older kids would go and then your groups come in. And so Clara would actually stay after her swim practice and help the younger kids, and that was me. And that's how we met, and just a long history. And since she's been at the Crisis Center since 2015, our lives have kind of circled back around. So there was many years where she went on to do her thing and I was doing a million other things. And now within the last few years, it comes full circle. And to see the work that she's doing and then look at it and how it ties in today's youth and to the work that I'm doing, it's just that moment where we talk about how great is Tampa Bay, how much is going on in Tampa Bay. And I think if Clara and I are an example of knowing each other literally our entire lives, but now we've reconnected because of our jobs within Tampa Bay and what we're doing for the community of Tampa Bay.
I'm so glad you talk about that, because you don't realize how much life comes full circle until you live it. And it's true. And it just keeps coming full circle. And I think that there's something about the energy, the synergy, the vibrations, the people that, like yourself, Brooke, who stay connected in this community, that somehow you can see the tides arising, and you can see, and yes, Brody, I'm throwing in extra puns here that deal with water and swimming.
Yeah.
As you can.
But
We should start checking them off.
Right.
Everything
Ding,
good
ding,
is
ding,
floating
ding.
to the top. See what I did there? But no, all joking aside though, but there is something about the synergy in this town, and you feeling so blessed to be part of what we saw. And there's a 10-year plus difference between you and I, but just seeing what this town, we know how special it is from going back, decades, but now to see it and how everyone comes together and lifts one another, it's pretty incredible to me.
I mean, we wouldn't even have enough time on a podcast to talk about the connections in my childhood, my high school, to people. And one of the girls I went to high school with is married to another, TV personality, and this. But so I guess the point of the story is it's like Tampa Bay has become such a tourist destination, right? I mean, I'm coming home from Atlanta, and I'm driving across the Courtney Campbell, and it was more challenging to find the Florida license plate versus naming all the different license plates that you see, right? So we've become such this tourist destination on how many thousands of people visit this area a year. And it's during spring break and all the baseball teams that are here for spring training and then summer vacations. But when I say that, how we've been able to remain, I still think, this small town community.
Yeah.
It's true.
Like the vibe.
It's true.
I grew up in Plant City, and you talk about, and staying connected to my roots in Plant City, but now I live in Clearwater, and I've kind of been adapted by Pinellas, and I love being as close to the beach, but then Tampa, but then you look at all the professional athletes that come through here and play seasons with the Lightning, play seasons with the Bucks, play with the Rays. And where do they stay?
Tampa.
Where do they talk about the greatest teams that they've played? And the stories of how they just feel like Tampa embraced and they feel at home. That is like special.
It's very special.
That's really special in everything that we do. So and people say to me all the time, if you didn't live in Florida and you didn't live in Tampa Bay, where would you live? Like, there is no option.
Right. I know. Is there any other place?
You would have, first of all, I'm not going anywhere that's not tropical.
Right. Especially as a swimmer.
I
that's
love
your
the
only-
mountains.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
great to go to the mountains.
To
But
visit.
like when I got home and I got out of my car yesterday and I started to feel the humidity, I'm like, oh, yes.
I know. I love
When
it.
my hair starts to frizz, I'm like, I'm home.
Perfect.
This is so great. So you would have to throw something at me more than just financially for me to uproot my entire life to go someplace else.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not.
I know. I can't wrap my head around it. My husband's like, I want to go live in Italy for a few months. I'm like, you do?
Right.
I'm like, I'll
great
go for
here.
maybe a couple
Yeah.
weeks, but I just love it here. Do you have any questions for Brooke, Brody?
I mean, I kind of have one more that's more athletic related. As someone who's been there, why do you think America is so dominant, especially in swimming in the Olympics? We have the only gold medals we have more than in swimming is in track and field. Why?
Well, so I want to say that is true. But we have seen a big start push to the Australians have always challenged us. They view swimming over there like we view the NFL. So real quick story on that was I got into after the Olympics and we were there staying after and we were, out enjoying ourselves and we got into a taxi cab to get back to go back to the Olympic Village. And the taxi driver turned around, knew exactly who I was, like recited my swims, knew my swims. Oh my gosh, it was so great to watch you swim. And granted, the Australians did not qualify top 8 for my 2 events. So I think I was kind of blessed by them. But the fact that the taxi driver knew immediately Brooke Bennett and my swims and my splits was like, I love my hometown. I just praised my hometown, but I was like, a person on the street wouldn't know that other than they made it recognize my face, and they would have been like, you're that swimmer that won the gold medal. What event was that again? To where this guy knew like everything. But the Australians have challenged us. The Italians have some really strong swimmers coming along. The French, we've seen them challenge us, and we've kind of been put in our place. But as a country as a whole, we have dominated. And the answer to that question is our colleges. So if you look, and if you were actually to go and start pulling college rosters, and you look, and I'll do Florida State. Neil Studd is the coach up there. Love him. Love what he's done to the program. And for the ACC, I mean, they're up in the top of the ACC now, and he recruits foreigners very well.
Really?
Virginia Tech, Sergio Lopez, who was a coach over at Bulls for a number of years, then went to Virginia Tech. He is very entrenched into the international field of swimmers. So we have the best opportunity for those international swimmers to come over, get an education, as well as train. And then they'll be collegiate swimmers, but then now let's move forward, and maybe we start to cover this when I get to geek out over the Olympics, right? And being on my Olympic podcast, which I should be in this same viewing area.
Yes,
hint, hint.
I know there's a big meeting schedule. I'm going to make it official.
And so maybe this is where I can totally geek out to really get into your question, is as we start to look at all the medalists in swimming, and even if they're not from the U.S., where are they swimming at in college?
That's
right?
so interesting.
Cool.
I never thought of the college recruiting in
It's
our
big
team.
in there.
It does, but I mean, swimming just has a long history, but I think that's how the rest of the world is starting to catch up with us. Is just the amount of foreigners that come over and go to college. But it challenges. And I mean, I'm going to say it. We've got the best coaches.
Yeah.
It's the same as track and field. Like I said, the Olympics, I geek out more and more because I feel it's the purest of athletics. It's only every 4 years. It doesn't happen like the World Series.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like the Stanley Cup.
I didn't realize
So it's a
how
big deal.
long ago it
4
was in.
years.
Yeah.
You got a lot of time to train.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time to train. So these athletes, us as athletes and Olympians, are not training for a goal. We're training for something every year. There's a world championship, but your stage, your Super Bowl, your World Series, your Stanley Cup final is every 4 years. And so these athletes that we will see this summer, and parents, are that dedicated to stay driven to that one. They want to be an Olympian. And there's a story to all of them.
It's
and
incredible.
That's why it gives me
I'm getting
chills
goosebumps.
Yeah,
thinking
when
about
you think
that.
about that, like how far out
Yes.
you're looking and
Yeah.
how far out you're
And
training.
we want to keep it pure. We want to keep it clean. I'm a big proponent to that. I mean, there's, the Netflix series and things are out now talking about where sports got off track and a lot of doping and a lot of things. And we've seen a lot of things coming out. And I'm one of an advocate, and probably more podcast conversations is, keeping the sports clean. And keeping the genders right are two big topics
Well, I
for
was
me
gonna-
as
I
we
was
go
gonna
into
ask
this.
you-
And it's
You don't
so
have
hard
to share. You don't have
Yeah.
to share your opinion, but we're talking about colleges. Is the whole swim community kind of watching with bated breath this NCAA stuff? Like, I know
Well,
this
I think
lawsuit's just coming out.
I think finally they're going to do what they should have done 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was disturbing for me. It was hard. I voiced it out. I'm not, and
so you're not quiet about this.
No, I'm
you've
not
taken your
going
stance, which
to.
I respect.
Feels like a lot of people
I'm
are
not the
speaking out now.
athlete anymore. I mean, I don't know what I would have done if I was forced to get up and compete at that time. It wasn't there. But we have to have an avenue for everybody to compete.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means we create an open category so that individuals can compete, then that's fine.
That's an interesting.
But when it
Yeah.
comes down to it, it's science, and I cannot be any more clear on how I stand. That
it's science.
it
and
is science.
It's science.
It is
and you
two
can't.
genders.
It's two different genders. And listen, I don't wear my journalism hat anymore. I'm not in the news, so I can finally have an opinion.
Yeah.
you can't do that because you're taking away from women and once again and their ability to achieve and hit their fullest potential because you're not fairly stacking the deck.
And the hardest thing that I see and what's coming out now is that so many of these girls were told to hush.
Yeah.
That your voice does not matter. And aren't we
we should be way past that.
Haven't we done so much to allow a woman's voice to matter? And you're telling these young collegiate athletes to hush and you just have to accept it. Like
no,
it doesn't, it's not so much to me as looking as the race that was done and the award that was given. It's the mental health that we risked on these women.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's it.
I agree.
So we have to,
and that
we
should
have
matter.
to
That
protect
should matter.
sports.
Yeah, you have to protect
in
sports.
general. We have to protect sports on all level, and that's protecting men and women and everything in between and on the side.
And
there has to be, and like I said, the fairest that I can see is that you have an open category for individuals that see themselves differently of male and female. You have an open category and that's it. And that solves it. But you can't, puberty is I see my 9-year-old starting to change. He's not my little boy anymore. And he's already starting to go through it at 9. I'm starting to see. So a 9-year-old boy is totally different from what a 9-year-old girl is.
Right.
So when you get to that level of playing fields in all sports and some of the injuries that are starting to come out, there just has to be a decision made on how we make it fair across the board.
Exactly. And it's like you said, I think we're catching up on a lot of the science and stuff too. And it's a catch-22 because they'll call you a turf or something like that if you want to say, hey, I'm for these women, sort of, because it's like it used to be you had to stand in support of that. So that's interesting. I actually met Riley Gaines a month or two ago at like a big conservative event. They all love her, obviously. So it was cool to meet her. She was super cool, kind of hearing some of that stuff. So that's kind of like what led me to think some of those questions. But I've said that same thing about a different category. And I had people tell me that that's like, they're like, oh, that's problematic that you should think they have their own thing.
Why?
And
Why
I'm like,
can't girls and boys compete against each other in a designated category? That's fine.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
not like it's chess. You know,
then you
I
know
would
what
understand
all
that
the
if
cards
it was
are on the
meant
table.
That's different. Yes.
Well, and so they did, and I believe it was like a swimming World Cup back a few months ago, even if it was like last summer, that they decided to have an open category and nobody signed up for it.
Right.
It was empty. It was an empty category. So we just, and there's been, I mean, Leah Thomas, I'm not gonna, I mean, I can because you've brought it up and you've put the attention out there. And there have been articles said where Thomas said, I don't want to disrespect women, but you are, and you need to look at that. And if you're doing what makes you happy, you also need to do and look at the way that you're treating those women into a world that we want, that you want us to open our arms up and welcome you. And Leah Thomas will never have to worry about, and I did this in my career, about taking birth control to cycle so I don't have a period
when you're swimming.
When I'm swimming, or that, you know, I'm going to the Olympics and you feel
it goes
like crap.
back to it's
you
science,
feel like crap and you're
right.
rolled over on the floor. And I remember morning practices just trying to get out of bed because I didn't want to miss a swim practice to go train when I'm literally running out of a pool to go to the bathroom because I don't want to be embarrassed in front of my male teammates. Though they will never have to experience that. So then your playing field is completely different because what I'm doing to my body to try to compete and not have a normal cycle, because this is when an Olympic trials is and this is when an Olympic is and world championships is.
I didn't even know that. Like, you don't even think about those things.
And you're so in shape and so lean that it probably throws your hormone
everything off. But it literally, you know, I mean, these female athletes in all sports. I mean, I've talked to female weightlifters and female track runners and things like that, and they're doing the same thing we are.
Yep.
You know,
interesting.
Triathletes, the top triathletes in the world are doing the same thing. We as women cannot go and be expected to compete on that elite level. And if I'm on my cycle and my best competitor isn't, she has a better plan. Like, so we're thinking about all these things where a male would never, that cycle is never going to come into your mind. So it just, if this is where we're at and this is where society is, it is just not, okay, well, then if you identify as a woman and you want to go through those changes, then okay, you can come over here. No, it has to be laid out. It has to be thought out. And I do believe there is a solution that everybody can live with.
Yeah.
And that's where, and if that's where we're trending, I think in sports, I hope that every sports group and sports governing body will figure out what works best for their sports. Because I'm not saying that Leah Thomas can't swim. I've never said that. I cannot, and I'm not saying that Leah Thomas cannot be Leah Thomas if Leah Thomas was born William. I'm not saying that, and I'm not discrediting, and I wouldn't badmouth anybody. However, we do have to look at sports in general and what scientifically makes a male different than a female when we're competing in sports. They're not coming into my job and they're not my coworker at a desk, you know, being an admin director or development manager, because in that field, it makes no difference in the world to us.
Right. Agreed.
But in sports,
it matters.
When it's your physical ability and your strength, totally different. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off track.
No, that is not off track. I
point.
think it's fascinating and it's something that needs to be discussed. And I'm sure there are people listening and, you know, maybe spouting off, you know, not happy with what we're saying right now. But I think you bring up some really, really compelling thoughts and things for people to think about before they start so flippantly making their decisions. Anything else?
I think that was it. Not that we have
That
time
was
for
good.
it.
That was a great conversation,
Yes,
Brooke.
it was. Thank you.
I hope to see you sitting in these chairs and you know throughout the Summer Olympics coming up in Paris. I know WFLA and NBC. This is home to the Olympics. This is where you'll be watching everything happen. And we have our hometown hero here, a three-time, I can't say it enough, Olympic champion, Brooke Bennett, right here in Tampa Bay. Thanks for all the incredible work you do, and thanks for being an official member of the Bloom Health Club.
Glad to be here. Thank you guys so much.
All right. Thank you. Until next time.